Welcome to the Programming Lines podcast. Today, we have Will Reusch on the show. He is incredible. He has been an educator his entire career, beloved by his students, focuses on critical thinking. And recently, he's broken off to start his own business, which focuses on critical thinking skills for youth. Can he help out the Programming Lines? Well, let's see. Welcome to the Programming Lines podcast. We are so pumped to have you on. We've been following you and your social media channel for quite a while. We love your approach to critical thinking, problem solving, how you break down complex and sometimes like pretty dicey, controversial issues. Nonetheless, for our audience who's not familiar with you, could you give us a little bit about your background and what you're up to?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Will Reusch. I've been a high school civics and social studies teacher for the last 17 years, all across Los Angeles, wealthier communities, more impoverished communities, private schools, charter schools, public schools, things like that. And then this year, I'm taking a break from the classroom to build my own homeschool and supplemental critical thinking platform to help young minds to resist indoctrination and brainwashing and all of that kind of wild stuff, to bring critical thinking and viewpoint diversity to education. It's called Patterdox. The idea is that if you understand patterns and meta patterns in society, then you'll be able to make better sense of the world.
Okay, I love that.
Cool. Okay. First question. So, Patterdox.
Yeah.
First of all, what is it? Why did you did it? And who's it for?
Yeah. Okay. So why I did it was because I was having a lot of success in the classroom. My students really loved what I was doing. They were talking about how it was changing the way they saw the world. This was happening for years and years and years. So I kind of felt guilty that it was only reaching the kids in this one community, in this one school, in my one classroom. And I felt the need to serve beyond that, to be honest. Why did I do it? What is it? It's an online supplemental platform, which means that it's not going to replace school, but what it is something that you add on top of school because it will help you in all of your subjects. If you learn how to think and how to think clearly, then that can apply across the board in math and sciences and English and history and all of that kind of stuff. And I use social science because that's my specific area, social sciences specifically in U.S. history, civics, sociology, as the vehicle to deliver the critical thinking. So there has to be like an area that we use to use critical thinking, and that's the area. So that's what Patterdox is.
And for the audience, how do you sign up for it?
Patterdox.com.
Yeah.
Patterdox.com. And right away, you can just purchase it, but I would prefer to have a conversation with the people who are interested to really see if I can serve. This isn't any kind of just money grab or anything like that. It's about finding the right people who are the right fit so that I can hear about what struggles different parents and students have, and then see if there's a program within that I can provide, because the software is there, the bones are there of the business, but it's going to grow in a direction that meets the needs of the people who are enrolled.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Okay,
wow.
I love that. And as a disclaimer, we are early bird signups for Patterdox. So the boys and we actually took a look at the first lesson. You want to tell Will what you thought?
I would love to hear about it.
We saw the Simpsons, or the introduction to the Simpsons and all of the characters.
Okay, so that's the American Social Issues class. Yep. That was a class that I wrote in like 2007, a long time before you guys were born. And then I got it UC approved for like official credits and stuff like that because I was at a charter school. And then I taught it for about 4 years at a charter school. It's learning basic sociology topics and then watching Simpsons episodes with a viewing guide and being able to pick out the things that I talked about in the slideshow and in the recording from the episode. So what'd you boys think?
It was pretty cool. Yeah. All right.
We enjoyed going through all the characters in the background. We're just kind of early into that lesson plan, and then we'll catch up on some of the Simpsons episodes, which will be a little bit of a flashback for me. I probably watched some of these years back. And it's really interesting because it's a clever way to teach some of these concepts, right? I think this will be a really fun way for the kids to get information and associate that into real life. So I'm looking forward to getting through it.
Yeah, it's a brilliant show, especially I pick out episodes from the first 10 seasons. So it's like 1989 to 1999, which is, again, is a very long time ago, but it holds up. It had more people writing for it that graduated from Harvard than any other show. It's a lot deeper than people kind of gave it credit for, especially back then. It wasn't just slapsticky. There was a lot of nuance to it, and every character represents someone in the real world.
We got a number of things we want to pick
Yeah.
your brain on today around the school system, constructive approaches to critical thinking and culture wars and things like that. But we had one other fun topic that we wanted to get into with you before that.
I heard that you do Jiu Jitsu.
Mm-hmm.
So how long have you done it, and what do you love about it?
I've been doing it for a very long time. I started in 2009, but I've been doing it sporadically. So I go for a little bit and then I pull back and I go for a little bit. I've had 3 kids in that time. I got married. Had 3 kids in that time. Transferred different schools and things like that in that time. I've gotten injured. I got sick. It's been a long process. It's a huge part of my life, but sometimes I don't go for a few months, and then sometimes I go 3 or 4 times a week. It's kind of all over the place, but it's absolutely a wonderful, wonderful outlet for me. I love it and I encourage it. My sons, they're a little bit younger than you guys, but 9, 7, and 2. But the 9 and the 7-year-old do jiu-jitsu regularly and compete and things like that. I think it's great.
That's pretty
Awesome.
cool.
Yeah. Teaches great discipline, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
self-defense skills, all of that. Just to follow up on this, so since you are into jiu-jitsu,
Yeah.
if you had the opportunity to roll with anyone in the world, who would it be?
I think it would be the best in the world. So it'd be either like Craig Jones or Gordon Ryan. I obviously it wouldn't be competitive, but that's always what's so interesting.
Yeah.
Is those levels, or maybe someone really small. That's Mikey Musumeci is one.
Mhm.
Like someone who's really small, but at that high level too. It's always fascinating when someone who's 100 pounds less than you can choke you out easily.
I know.
It's fascinating. It really is. It's just
Yeah.
it's
Cool.
Humiliating maybe too, but yeah, very interesting.
very
That's the
real.
beauty of that sport. All right, well, let's get into
The
some of the school system
system.
topics.
Okay.
Nice. What prompted you to do public teaching?
It's a good question. I wasn't sure what I wanted to be when I grew up. I kind of was nudged by my family into going to a service. So my sister went into nursing, and I originally was going to be a police officer. I went into criminal justice as my major, but the first day of class, the gentleman that was teaching the class was not very nice. He didn't really sell it as a way to help people. It was more of a way to kind of force your way on people, and I didn't like that. So I walked out and changed to teaching, thinking along the lines of the Frederick Douglass quote, it's a lot easier to build strong boys than heal broken men. So I'd rather get to them before they were criminals rather than after.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I moved out to California, because I grew up in Pennsylvania, then when I moved out to California, wanted to get a job wherever I could. And I got a job at a public charter. It was a small school. It was far away from my house. So it was a long commute and stuff, but it was a wonderful opportunity. And I loved it right from the jump. I just loved working with these young minds and helping them to figure out the world, because we're all figuring out the world, even as grownups. We're still figuring it out. And it's fun to share that process with our students.
Indeed.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I love it.
So, is traditional school holding kids back, kind of?
Holding kids back? What do you guys think?
Yeah, I do think that they could do some different subjects. Like,
Yeah.
I'd like to learn about more stuff that I could actually use, like how to put taxes in. Instead, we
Okay.
have to learn about how to diagram sentences.
I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
there are a few
Yeah.
things I'd replace.
Okay, yeah, I hear you. I think that a lot of what the school system does is like diagramming sentences is boring, but it is useful because what it does is it helps you to be a clear communicator. But I don't think that when you're in English class or language arts class, they explain that very well. I don't think they tell you this is how you are able to communicate your ideas well. I mean, you boys are on a podcast. It's important to be able to communicate well. And when you break down a sentence, that helps you to understand how to get your ideas out there very effectively. And I don't think that's the way that it's done. I think school holds people back because it doesn't give them a lot of the application. They'll say, learn this or learn that, but they don't explain to you why very well. And I think that's a big problem. But I also agree with you, Will, that there's the things that you're taught, but then there's the things that you're not taught. There's a lot of things that you're not taught that can be really, really useful. Basic things around the house, how to fold laundry or something like that. I mean, there's a lot of things. If a water pipe breaks,
Yeah.
what the water main is, or what a fuse box is, and stuff like that. And that's not taught even up and through high school. There's a lot of those kinds of things. Entrepreneurship, even something like Excel spreadsheets, like how to do a spreadsheet would be great for, especially high schoolers to learn. It's a skill that you can apply right away in the real world and get a job. And there's not a lot of that. I think the school system does hold a lot of kids back for their individual wants and their individual abilities, because there's so many kids that you have to kind of just go for the center, and you're going to lose a whole bunch of them on their individuality, but you have to kind of teach to the masses. And I don't think that's ideal, because we aren't just a mass. We're individuals with individual abilities and individual wants and needs.
Yeah. I think it's a good point in terms of just things around the house. My dad did a lot of things around the house for himself, and I learned from him. And I try to do that with the boys. When like a pipe broke under the sink, I brought them with me. We went to Home Depot. We picked up the parts. We brought them home. We fixed it. Whereas today, what I'm finding is a lot of my, let's say, friends or colleagues, they call a plumber, and that's like the extent of what they know how to do.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Our next or the next question for you is the school system doomed? And if not, what can we do to recover it?
It's kind of a bold question, but maybe, Will, to put it a little more context, is if I look at trends of homeschooling and test scores through the schooling systems, they're all moving, let's say, in a declining direction.
Yeah.
So hence the question, like, is the typical or traditional public school system on a downward spiral?
I think it is. I think that it's going to be decentralized. So what that means is, instead of just the big public school of the town, I think there's going to be a lot of smaller charter schools, online schools, magnet schools, stuff like that. I think there's going to be a lot of options. I think it's going to become more options based, like most things are. If you want to get gas in your car, there's a whole bunch of different gas stations. You want to buy a pair of shoes, how many choices do you have for shoes? You want to go to a grocery store, how many choices do you have for the grocery store? The way it would be now, boys, it would be like, because you live in this neighborhood, you have to go to this neighborhood grocery store. You can't go 3 miles down the road to that one that has maybe food that you're more aligned with. Maybe it has, more organic food or fresher fruits and veggies. You can't go there. You have to go to your grocery store that's in your neighborhood. And that just doesn't make sense. That's not the way that things work. And yet that's the way that schools work. And I think that is becoming obsolete. And I think that's going to be replaced by options, just like a grocery store. You can go to a whole bunch of different, in the same little outdoor mall area, there might be a Whole Foods, and we have Ralph's out here. It could be a ShopRite. It could be all these different ones. And then you get to choose. One of them's a little bit cheaper. One of them's a little bit better. And you can decide which direction you want to go. I think that's the direction that schools are headed.
Right.
Our next section is going to be about your constructive approaches.
Okay.
Yeah. So, how do you encourage and teach students and people about respectful debate?
Oh, yeah, I love that. I was a debate coach for like 10 years, but I always prefer conversation to debate. Because in a debate, you're trying to win. You're trying to win a debate. You're trying to prove that the other person is wrong and prove that you're right. But if you're doing that and the other person makes a good point, you're going to ignore that good point. You're going to try and shoot down that good point. You're trying to or ignore it, as opposed to bringing that good point into you now and go, that's a good point. That's a good element of their side of this. So I prefer conversation to debate. But the way to do it constructively is, there's a whole bunch of different things. Part of it is your willingness to try and find what's true, not to be right. The goal isn't to be correct. The goal is to get to the correct answer. And I think that's really important. I think showing intellectual humility, which is you don't know everything, you have stuff to learn about everything, is really important. I think genuine curiosity, like why do you think what you think? As opposed to you support this idea or you think that, you must be an idiot. How could you possibly think that? Instead of using that as like a rhetorical question, which is like a question you're not really looking for the answer. Instead, you actually ask the question. Show curiosity. I think that helps. And the last one is grace, extending courteous goodwill, essentially treating people really well, even if they don't deserve it. So if someone's being mean to you, you still aren't mean to them back. I think those are ways to have productive debate.
That's good advice. And I like the point about
Keep that in mind.
conversation versus debate. I think we're all trying to get to the truth and the right answer. That's the best place to be.
I don't know if
And-
we all are, but reasonable people are, for sure.
Yes, that's a good point. At least on this podcast, probably are. But
Yes.
to your point, we started this social media channel and we have people that come into our comments. And I know you do too, because I've been in your comment sections. And there are trolls or people that come in with fairly unproductive conversational style. And we've definitely taken the point of trying to be respectful and polite in terms of how we reply to people. But what we've found in a lot of cases is a lot of people's minds just aren't open to conversation. And there's literally nothing you can say to change their mind. And on the flip side, like those are the people that I find most interesting to talk to because they have such a different view perhaps than we do. Like, tell me more about why you feel that way. And then, when the response is, well, you're an idiot or you're a bigot or you're a whatever, that just doesn't like progress the conversation. How do you deal with people like that?
I am sincere. I think that comes across, but some people are just closed off. If they're closed off and if it's public, so you're trying to have a conversation with people and they are being very rude to you back, then it looks almost, boys, I don't know if you're familiar with Martin Luther King.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
we know him.
All right. So Martin Luther King would go out and try and bring equality in society according to people because of their skin color. And when people were mean to him, he used nonviolent resistance. And so if someone was physically hurting him, he would still not hit them back. And that made it very clear who the good guy was and who the bad guy was. And I do think that when you're being gracious and sincere in trying to engage with someone and they're being rude to you back, I think it's very clear to anyone watching who's in the right and who's in the wrong. And I think that's how things in society, when you go, wow, this side is actually trying to engage and being polite and being sincere, and this side is just being rude, it starts to show up. But people have their reasons for why they're stuck in the way that they do. There's a whole bunch of reasons why, the way that the brain even works. It's better to be a part of a group than it is to be correct. So people will stay incorrect on purpose and try to resist being proven wrong because it doesn't feel good to be proven wrong. Boys, let me ask you something. What does it feel like to be wrong?
Bad.
Terrible. Yeah.
Feels
the
very
worst.
bad to me.
Okay.
Especially when I lose the debate against my brother. And I get
Right.
mad.
But it actually only feels bad when you know you're wrong, when you're proven wrong. But when you're wrong and you don't know that you're wrong, how does it feel? Just like being right?
Yeah.
Kind of
That's
interesting.
weird.
That's kind of
We'll
interesting.
test that out next time we debate.
Yeah. If you say the car outside is blue, but then you can't see it, and your brother says, well, no, it's actually red. You're like, no, it's blue. And you remember it very clearly as blue. You feel good. You're like, he's an idiot. I can't believe he thinks it's red. Okay. But then if you look outside and you find out it's red, then all those negative feelings hit. So I think a lot of people resist looking out the window because if it turns out that it's red, I'm going to feel bad, and I don't like feeling bad.
Yep.
Wow. That's deep.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and this maybe is a good segue into something else that we wanted to cover with you, which was the culture wars. And it's very much related in tribalism, ideology, or whatever. But these culture wars seem to be bringing a lot of divisiveness into society. I know you're trying to break that down through your approaches and your channel and your reach. We're trying to do the same, and it's really difficult. Like, it's really difficult. How do you see the culture war scenario, and what advice would you give?
It depends on what area specifically you're talking about, but seeking disconfirmation is something that I really support and believe in, which is trying to prove your position wrong, to try
Mhm.
and really understand the other side, which is sometimes hard to do. It's sometimes frustrating because it might be a position that you think is crazy.
Yeah.
But the more that you can understand the other side, the more you see the humanity in the other side, then the more you can engage. And it doesn't mean you change your mind, but at least you'll understand why. If you go to a coffee shop or something like that, okay, or boys, maybe in school, there's like a couple of children at school who are just really mean. They're just really mean to other boys and girls, or they yell at their teacher and stuff like that. And you're like, wow, they're just like a nasty kid, and no one wants to be friends with them and things like that. There's a reason why, and if you can try and learn that reason why, maybe they don't have a very nice, mom and dad at home. Maybe it's that. Maybe they're going through something really tough. Maybe their dog just died or something like that, and they're sad, and they don't want to cry at school, so they let it go with anger. I think that's the way that it is even for adults. I think that there's reasons why they have the positions that they do. And if you can try to understand those, maybe not with that individual if they won't engage with you, but when you understand the psychology of why people act the way that they do, it does open you up then to at least understand. You're not going to change your mind on a lot of things. And I don't think the goal is to change our mind. We don't want to all think the same thing, but we want to have more understanding. And when we have more understanding, we're going to disagree better. I think disagreement's important.
Mm-hmm.
I think that what we need to do, though, instead of just being all on the same page, is we want to actually disagree better.
I like that.
Wow. I like that.
Well, and we're looking forward to getting through some of your programming and on your platform with Patterdox, because this is really important for kids. I think like this kind of framing is going to help them be stronger adults, stronger community members, and everything. But I can say up to this point in our podcast, we've covered some pretty controversial issues, maybe like abortion being one of the like heavier ones.
The border.
And the border, yes.
Wow.
And so we've taken the approach of, boys, do some research, argue both sides of the topic,
Yeah.
bring that back, let's break those down, and then let's come up with our own opinion about what maybe the best or most productive outcome is based on all of that. But to your point, like, I learned this a long time ago. I need to understand the other side. Even if I don't believe it, I need to understand it so that I can argue like my points more effectively even. And I suppose you taught debate for a while, right, in school? And that's probably one of the tactics in debate, is to know the other side really well.
Yeah, called steel manning. So a straw man is when you take the worst argument, the kind of silliest, lowest level argument for a position, and then you argue against that.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not going to really hold up. That's what people
Mm-hmm.
do all the time with the other side,
Yep.
whether on cable news and things like that. But a steel man is the best argument for the other side. And if you're in a debate, and this is a good one for you boys, because you look like you're going to get into some good conversations in the future. I love it. Debate team or whatever it might be. If you sit down on any topic, you said abortion, that's a tough one. That's a deep one. Okay, because it's pitting life against liberty. And those are both really important American values, life and liberty. It just depends on which are people focusing on liberty, or are they focusing on life?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very interesting. But if you want to defend the position of pro-life, if what you do is you give great pro-choice arguments, better pro-choice arguments than your opponent could even make. And then after you make better positions and points than they can even make, you then say, despite all that, here's why I am on the pro-life side. And then you give your side that clearly you think is better than the other side. And that's very difficult to go up against, because you just took their best argument that they might have not even had and destroyed it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Wow.
We'll put that one in the memory bank.
Absolutely.
Write it down.
So, how do you encourage and teach critical thinking?
I think we're doing it right now. Critical thinking is constantly trying to refine your ideas up against pushback. I think it's a lot of curiosity. So I love the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates. You've always heard of Socrates?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, Dad told me about him.
Oh, he said he's the wisest man in the world because he knows that he knows nothing. So if you know nothing, then you can get really curious. And he was very curious. And he would walk around Athens, just walk around and ask people questions. And then when they answered, he would ask another question. And then another question about the response. And another question. Eventually, people got really upset with him because he was asking so many questions. And that revealed that they don't actually know themselves very well. In the Greek philosophy, they would say, know thyself. And it turned out that they didn't know themselves very well. So they got mad at him. They took him to a trial, and they convicted him, and they killed him. The charge was corrupting the youth, which is interesting for me as a teacher that's talking to you young boys about how to be a critical thinker and telling you to ask a lot of questions, okay? And people don't like that. They don't think I should be encouraging young people to ask a lot of questions because 500 BC, they killed Socrates for doing the same thing. So I think critical thinking, to answer your question, I think critical thinking is really embracing your natural curiosity. You boys are, 11 and 12?
Yep.
Okay, so in 11 and 12, you should be really curious. And your dad and I are older, but we should be really curious too. And the more that you're curious, the more you're going to understand the world. And just don't stop being curious. Albert Einstein said he's nothing special. He's just passionately curious. That's a big part of Patterdox. That's a big part of the way I've taught in the classroom, is just constantly pushing you to be more and more curious and ask more and more questions. And people might get upset, but I think it's worth it. I do.
Yeah.
Especially if your parents are behind you. So I wouldn't tell you to do anything that your parents don't want you to do, but.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, let's hope they don't come after you like Socrates. I think we're past that
Yeah.
in society, but
Wasn't he poisoned? I remember wasn't he poisoned
Yeah, hemlock
by the
poisoning. Yeah, they made him drink a poison called hemlock. Yeah, great job, Max. Yeah.
well, fortunately, the boys are in a charter school that encourages the Socratic method, and they do a lot of questioning in class, right, boys?
Yep.
So that leads to a lot of curiosity opening, and depending on the teacher and how they bring the material to the class, that can be a really great way to learn, obviously. So they're enjoying that.
I was just wondering, what makes a good teacher?
It's a good question.
That's a great question. A couple of things. One is personal relationships. I think that's one, is knowing your students well. Okay. So what are their interests? What are their struggles? Things like that. I think knowing your students very well is something. So the students are like, oh, they're not just here for a job. They actually care about me. I think modeling the behavior of how to live a good life, I think that makes a difference. If you look at your teacher and go, you know what, she seems happy with her life. He seems happy with her life. They seem to be doing, things that they enjoy. Even if you don't want the same life as them, the idea that they found something that they love, I think that makes a difference. And then I think the stuff of embracing curiosity, I think that's a big one. But what I would say is the job of a teacher, really fundamentally the job of the teacher, is not to have information. It used to be you go to your teacher and they have all the information, but now you have this, right? And the day that I could be replaced by Google is the day that I should, because you can look things up. My job, a teacher's job, is to connect the information that you can get anywhere with the individual that I have this relationship with, the student that I know personally. So here's why it's application. Here's why this information will help you, Max, not just at 11, but also at 21, 31, and 41. Here's why learning this will help you today and down the road.
All right.
Okay, same thing, Will, because you're a different kid with different ideas and different things that you like. So here's why learning this will help you down the road. And I think far too few teachers don't do that. They'll say, you have to learn about covalent bonds or what magma is or algebra. And then when a student says why, they say, because I said so, or just because. And I don't think that works. You mentioned diagramming sentences being boring. I think I could explain to you why diagramming sentences is important. I think that's the job of the teacher, is to say, let me explain to you, let me sit down with you and explain to you why diagramming sentences is important.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well,
And
now I have a few more questions to ask my teachers next time.
Yeah.
There you go.
And then-
Okay.
They might get a little upset, but you're at a good school, it sounds like, so they won't come after you like Socrates.
No.
All right.
Yeah.
So
They would
I just
poison me.
have one more question.
Mhm.
Before we get into rapid fire. So, have you ever wanted to use Jiu Jitsu on a student if they're like, have you ever wanted to?
No, I've never wanted to. They've asked me before, like, hey, Mr. Reusch, can I put you in a headlock and we can get out of it? I ran a grappling club at schools in the past where I actually would do jujitsu with my students. I'd teach them jujitsu. So in that way, I wouldn't want to use it in like a mean way, but to show them like the incredible abilities of jujitsu, absolutely, I would love to do that, but not in a way that would like, oh, you didn't turn in your homework or you're talking over me or anything like that. No.
Yeah.
You did turn your homework.
Right.
That would be fun.
No.
Well, that kind of wraps up the topics, but we have a little section we like to call rapid fire where the boys have queued up some great questions for you. So let's get into
I don't know, the first
that.
thing comes on
All
my
right.
head.
Yeah.
So, this is rapid fire. You have to answer every question as fast as possible.
Ooh.
Okay?
So it might not actually be what I think, but it's the first thing that comes to my mind. Okay.
So, 3, 2, 1. Would you rather be stuck in an Uber with Anthony Fauci or Ibram X. Kendi?
Even Max Handy.
All right.
Excluding us, who is your idol?
Jesus.
Would you rather fight a 1,000-pound duck or 1,001-pound ducks?
Oh, I'd rather fight 1,001-pound ducks.
Okay. Will you rather be a pure vegetarian or pure carnivore for the rest of your life?
Oh, carnivore. I could.
All right.
Popular
Have you
answer.
ever been stuck in a bathroom stall without toilet paper?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't ask any follow-ups about what I did. Okay.
Coolest invention in your lifetime?
Wi-Fi.
Wi-Fi.
All right. Would you rather die to a great white shark or flaming hot volcano?
Great white shark. It's cooler.
Okay, nice. Last one. If you had a superpower, what would it be?
Let's say Wolverine healing powers.
Whoa, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay.
No one's at. No, you're the first person to
That's
like.
a first for that answer. I
yeah,
like that.
you're the first person to like take it out of an actual movie.
Oh, okay.
I like that.
Yeah.
Everyone else is like invisible.
Yeah, everyone's like, the thing is, and also a bunch of people also say like flying, even though we are flying right now.
No.
Flying on
Because
Earth.
atoms never touch. We're an
Oh.
atom off the ground.
Oh. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting
Yeah.
way to think about it, Max.
Okay.
All right.
Wow.
All right. Well, that concludes rapid fire.
Yeah.
Thanks for entertaining us on that, Will.
All right. No, those are great questions.
So, before we log off, do you have any final advice for GSD Nation?
What does GSD stand for?
Get S word done.
I love that. Okay. So, advice. Be curious. Go out, be curious. Learn about the world. Don't shut that down. Don't crush that part of your brain. That's a gift. That's what I would say. Go out there and be curious. Yeah.
All right. I love it. Well, as we wrap up here, Will, you are bringing an important message and voice to both the youth and the public today, and we're excited about you kicking off Patterdox and the impact that you're going to have. I have no doubt that it's going to grow and scale and be amazing. We're part of that community, so we're looking forward to it ourselves. But as we wrap up, what are some resources or places people can go to find out more about you and your platform?
I would love to connect with anyone who's like, what is this? Would kind of be interesting. Let me just talk to them. So it's patterdox.com, Patterdox. It's the idea. Dox is belief. Patter is like that. There's patterns in the world. So it's the belief that you can make sense of the world by looking at patterns. Or my Instagram is just willreusch.com, WILLREUSCH.com.
Okay, perfect. And we'll definitely have those in the description so they can get in there and check out Will's stuff. We encourage you to do that. It was great connecting with you. I'm sure we know we're going to stay in touch through Patterdox, so we're looking forward to that. But really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing some of your advice. Our audience, I think, will take a lot from this. It's mostly parents and kids that get involved in watching our show. So thanks for bringing your voice to this Programming Alliance podcast.
All right. Well, I hope to connect with them. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, guys. This is great.
All right.
Very, very well done.
Thank you.
If you enjoyed the show, help us out. Like, subscribe, share, leave us a review. Until next time.